Tim, I mean, it's about much more, serious and important things, but it's Donald Trump, the deal maker. I mean, in essence, that, it's like putting in a low ball offer for a piece of real estate, threatening to walk away, and then always knowing that eventually or at some point you are going to pay a lot more. That's the way he seems to handle these things.
Yes, it's not more complicated than that. I think we keep trying to look for some subtle nuance to explain his behavior. He understands the world in very realist, it's an overused word, but transactional terms. Look at his real estate empire that he built in New York. It was the platform not just for the great wealth and the independence that wealth gave him to run for office. It was also his training in human nature. I mean, he understands how to press people's buttons. I think importantly, Steve, he understands power coming from land. This is something that we've lost. We think land is a problem. In Australia, we're always seeking to apologise for land that we've acquired. The European Union is predicated on international law, not on land grabs, which is why the EU has been so singularly incapable of challenging Vladimir Putin, who does think in terms of territory, of terra firma. Well, Trump is very much the same, and he sees Greenland not as a projection, I don't think, of America's imperial power, but as a really important piece of real estate, and he gets that, and we don't have a way of countering that because we think in highfalutin ways about middle power diplomacy and international law and inclusive governance. And Trump continues to steal a march on those middle powers because of their basic failure.
And Tim, what he also understands is, one, the power of the US military, and two,
yes,
the power of the US economy, because he says, look, if you don't do that, then I'm going to mess with your economy. And if you mess with me, you'll get an aircraft carrier battle group in your backyard pretty quickly.
Yes. I mean, it's classic power politics. And if you've got men under arms, missiles at your command, and the world's biggest economy, it gives you a huge amount of room for maneuver. And I suppose what you end up doing is forcing your allies into a degree of sycophancy, which they're dressing up as clever middle power diplomacy. And he put the fear of God into opponents. Iran, he is establishing both a dialogue track when it comes to the mullahs, and also being this track is backed up by the deployment of significant military force into the Mediterranean. This is old school diplomacy. It's kind of, we need a Napoleon or an Andrew Jackson, the guy that Trump models much of his foreign policy on, to try and understand this. And we're just not schooled anymore in this kind of history. We think we've gotten over it, and we're advocates of a rules-based order. Well, the rules are made by the man with the most power, and in the current moment, that's Donald Trump.
To that very point, your very good piece in The Australian today, you argue that his nationalism actually clashes with Europe's rule by expert system, and you make the point that, borders and national interests still matter more than the global ideals. I mean, that's where we're at with this guy. And the other thing we have to remember, I mean, this is term 2 for him. I mean, he knows, probably deep down, he knows that this is it. He's got 3 more years, and he's going to shape the world in the shape that he believes it should be in.
Yes. He is at that stage of the cycle, the presidential cycle, which is quite common. It's the second term. There aren't many good examples of second terms going well. He knows he's got less than 3 years in the office. He's 80 in June. I mean, he will be the oldest man with this much power in world history, let me suggest. And he knows his time is limited. He went hard in that first year. It was just a storm of executive orders, of throwing things up in the air. I thought he would peak in that first year. Instead, he's continued the pace. He's moved it away from domestic politics, even though he's running hard on that in places like Minneapolis, and has extended it to the world. This is a guy who we always assume is going to run out of energy, and hasn't. But the lesson of history is that all second terms fade if they don't end in some sort of crisis. If he's able to buck that trend, he will earn an even bigger place in history than the one he's already written for himself.
He doesn't have a lot of regard for the European leaders, and your point about the fact that Putin realises that land is important and he wants to re-establish the old USSR and get more land back, and Trump's similar to him in that regard. So maybe that's one reason why the two of them seem to get on, and why Donald Trump's not a massive fan of Vladimir Zelensky in Ukraine.
Yes, I think there's something to that. I mean, I think the analogy between Putin and Trump starts to break down, but it's important in this respect. They are both very ardent nationalists, and they see their national interests in territorial terms. The experience of Europe, of course, in the Second World War was how far nationalism brought that continent to ruin. So they developed quite explicitly a system of governance where technocrats rather than nationalists, where experts rather than ideologues would have power. Trump is a reversion back to that rather 1930s emphasis that power and the projection of power is about the acquisition of land. I think Trump is not a dictator in Putin's terms, but he shares with the Russian leader a concern with establishing power through the acquisition of territory. And again, I'll say that European leaders just don't have a vocabulary of resistance to this restoration of a very old formula of great power politics.
It's a fascinating thing to watch. Timothy Lynch, I really appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you very much.